flying by. They were able to maintain their composure, and they knew that if their time was called, they will have given their life in the most worthy of all things. In the only way that can truly demand the life from you, and that is in service to the spirit of the West.
Hey kid, don't ever let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you could get. Don't let them guide your life towards regret. I'll fight for what I love with every breath. My past is filled with things I won't forget. I use them all to push me to my best. So treat the worst of times just like a test. If only I could go back in time, I'd tell myself that everything will end up alright. Just push yourself, test yourself, figure out what you like, and find your limits, don't be rigid, always work towards a prime. Surround yourself with open minds, people can change your life. A few friends with intent can help you feel alive. Find a passion, take some action, and with a little time, just be patient, make a statement, try to enjoy your life. They'll try to kick you while you're down. They wanna rise up while you drown. They wanna fill your head with doubt. They're silently scared that you'll figure it out. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless. Make some progress, I can see that they compare. I think everyone's against me, maybe something in the air. Am I paranoid? I swear a void is forming and they're scared. I walk a straight path, not many can say that. I like to play fast, cross me and there's payback. You better pray that I don't see your face at any place that I go. I know you hate that. I've been doing fine, I'm not wasting any more time. I live for the fight and the climb. And I think that the pain that's deep inside is what defines. So I won't give up, I'm gonna make it to the top. I don't care what's in my way, I swear I'm never gonna stop. I could fall flat on my face and I swear I will get back up. Cause I don't deserve a thing and the road ahead is tough. They'll try to kick you while you're down. They wanna rise up while you drown. They wanna fill your head with doubt. They're silently scared that you'll figure it out. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless.
Won't we are rolling in, going free. Let me do a quick check here on the audio, make sure it's right. It's a little too late to be shouting this evening, but it's worthy of shouting because the Virginia GFC, the great and heroic Franklin and Caleb and myself, we met just last night in Leesburg, Virginia, to confront these the mayor herself and then the mayoral candidate, and ask them about anti-white and anti-whitism. And we had some very interesting findings. Now, we have a lot of video and audio that I have to go through to put together a nice, neatly packed, pithy piece of material that we can share. But until then, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get together and I wanted to slap a bunch of this, not a bunch, actually just a little bit of the video together so that you all could see the raw video, raw Leesburg. So we're going to be looking at that in a moment. It was an eye-opening experience. The camaraderie that I felt with these two gentlemen, and I think they're both here tonight. Yeah, Caleb, Franklin are both here. True champions of the West. These are men of the West. God bless these guys. Let's get some 07s and raucous emojis in the live chats for these guys. Some V's for victory. I mean, both of you, we had a great time. We had a blast. And we are going to be doing this. The Virginia GFC, Going Free Club, is going to be doing this kind of a thing more often. And we're going to be learning as we do it and becoming increasingly effective. So this was a great way to get started out there in the once great town of Leesburg, Virginia. Now, if you don't know, Loudoun County, in which Leesburg, the town of Leesburg, is located, might be the richest county per capita in the country. And these candidates, they reminded us several times that specifically Leesburg has been voted by Forbes magazine as the #1 place in America. Was that it? Was it the #1 place in America to live? And for those of you who don't know, Loudoun County, outside of Fairfax County, was the place that people fled to get away from. They white flighted to Loudoun County, one of several counties that they white flighted from Fairfax when the white erasure in Fairfax been underway for a very long time, and used to be just a wonderful rolling hills and farms and really beautiful. And they've ruined it. The anti-whites have ruined it. They brought in people from all around the world, some of them wonderful people, some of them not so wonderful, but in both cases, they come with their instincts, their biosphere for who and what they are, what created the place they came from. And they bring that with them. And as you know, those of us who study the Go Free method, we know that once peoples achieve numerical courage, and this is a relative number because it's relative to the other peoples that are present, and then certainly relative to the numerical majority that is present, they then project this onto their environment. And Fairfax, because government is really the seat of anti-whitism, and Washington, D.C. abuts Fairfax County. And of course, you have all of these people that the federal government, as anti-white as it can be, brings in to work for the federal government. It's easier, perhaps, in some cases, to get those people to work for and achieve and be fine with or delighted with anti-white objectives, like white erasing Fairfax, Virginia. And so Fairfax went from a place that had no gangs, for example, virtually no murders or anything of that nature, to a place that increasingly looks like other anti-white cities across the West, county in this case, although there is a Fairfax city. Now there are well over 200 gangs and the cost of living going through the roof because you have a lot of people who are paid with our tax dollars. And so as lots of those people move in, room for housing decreases, the environment is ruined, and the price of everything goes through the roof because there's a supply issue that is limited by finite resources. And people fled. A lot of white people white flighted out of Fairfax County, and they still do. And one of the places they went was Loudoun County. Now, Loudoun used to be just like bum nowhere. I mean, it was way out there. It was beautiful, of course. I mean, especially like the city of Leesburg, absolutely beautiful. And you can prepare yourself for the anti-whites to change the name of that town. It's like technically a town of Leesburg, a very, very large town. And quaint, beautiful, historic. Lee, because named after Robert E. Lee, the general of the Army of Northern Virginia. So that will have to go. It will have to be white erased. But of course, you know that even if Lee had taken the offer from Lincoln to be the Army, to be the general of the Army of the Potomac, the United States Army, and then had this town named after him, they would still get rid of it. Why? Because we know here that it's all about victimizing Western kind, Western civilization. And people in Leesburg and these other counties around Fairfax, they tried their hardest. They've been lobbying and doing everything they could to prevent their counties from undergoing what happened in Fairfax County. And for years and years, they've been forestalling this, but they are, of course, losing the battle. And they're losing the battle because they refuse to defend where we are attacked. And the other issue, of course, is with the booming number of the population, it just continues to grow. There are huge swaths that are now called by locals Little India. There's nothing little about these growing subdivisions where they have mowed down entire ancient forests here in Virginia and built subdivisions for the endless influx from the wonderful subcontinent of India, which seems to have no end to the people. And they just keep pouring in. And they're everywhere. They're driving around the most expensive Teslas, good for them. And living in nicest houses, good for them. They come in, they get their education. One great example of this, of how they're able to do so well, not only because they work together. Now, not every India is really fractured in languages and religions and regions. So, but very large groups will work together, especially the Hindi, and good for them to be able to do that. They hook each other up. Somebody needs a job, it's going to go to one of their people. And even though that's not legal for whites to do. And of course, they will also accept a lower salary. How can they accept a lower salary? Well, they get their education in places like India, and it costs them nothing relative to the US, and they do it in half the time. And then they come over and they get right to work. And you can imagine a single family home in a subdivision, what this looks like to somebody coming from the subcontinent of India. And where they want to begin about where their rights are and how much can be expected of them is as workers is far lower than where white people have fought and bled with unions and without unions and etc. And of course, business owners, they love that. They're like, let's push it right back down to them the workers getting no money. Democrats claim, of course, to represent the working class. They don't represent the working class at all. They're not standing up against the influx of these peoples because it's just a pretext to represent the working class. And so these people pour in and they destroy by weight of their numbers, vis-a-vis the number of jobs that are available. They destroy a lot of achievements that are made for the working class. This includes white-collar work, of course, as well as blue collar. This is my opinion. You'll have to check it out with MSNBC or maybe the woman who runs YouTube. And this creep has, as a consequence, has turned into an outright deluge in these counties, Loudoun as well. Loudoun, though, has really taken off as the place to live when you have too much money. It's become very expensive. And in fact, one of the things these candidates talked about, 7 of them were there, the mayor and the contender, and then county position folks. They all talked about affordable housing. They say so many of their workers, so many of the employees in the town of Leesburg drive from as far away as West Virginia, so several hours. Because in West Virginia, they can afford housing. They can afford housing in the town of Leesburg or in Loudoun County. So there's this desire, and of course, it is. I'm not going to talk about it tonight. I don't know how long we're going to be together. And just so you all know, one of the platforms through which this stream is traveling is having some troubles, and that's why we were a couple minutes late starting. They were absolutely just not streaming or allowing the stream to go through. So if it suddenly goes away or there's some problems, some glitches, then it's them, it's not yours truly. So we'll see. And for that reason, we'll be showing the video that we have, the very short compilation, cuts here and there, moving all over the place, just to show you that it happened and how glorious it is. But I'm just trying to give you some context. So these people, wealthy people, there were already wealthy people living there, very wealthy anti-whites. I mean, owning huge, sprawling estates out in Loudoun County. You just wouldn't believe. McMansions, like you, multi-million-dollar McMansions. And then, of course, they live there to escape what they do elsewhere. As a consequence, Loudoun County, of course, very heavily Democrat when it comes to votes. But the affordable housing is something that we can talk about on another night, because you can see where the dial is pointed. Who's going to be housed? Who are going to be allowed to live in those affordable housing units that are available to the public? It's not going to be the white population. And they're not going to call it anti-white. And we discovered that, the great Franklin, the great Caleb, and yours truly, at this debate last night. So we traveled. Caleb had to come the furthest, and a big, hats off and salute to him for that hell of a drive that he had to make. It was reminiscent to me. I used to drive from here, all over. But last night I was recalling, as I was talking with Ladybug, about how there were times I drove all the way down to Stanton, Virginia. We're talking about a handful of hours each direction in order to give speeches. So, and Caleb said he wouldn't miss it for the world. He's absolutely a great guy. I've told you I've met Franklin before. Franklin, absolutely heroic, great guy. Caleb, meeting him for the first time, real guy, hardcore lover of Western civilization, Western kind. Heart is on his sleeve, and he's ready to go to battle with love and in love, with malice toward none. And it was a wonderful thing for us to come together. Something truly different that in the white sympathetic sphere has never happened. Never. For all the decades I've been around and all the decades that I learned off of people older than myself, there's been nothing like this ever. There's never been anybody in this lane because it wasn't there for them. You either had to be a conservative content creator, politician, one of the rank and file who is actually a good person, but being led around by the nose by people who only want their votes and money. And then the other option was to be an antag in some sort of fashion. So this is something truly revolutionary, and you can really see how revolutionary it is when you're having in-person conversations. Franklin and Caleb both got to see with one of these guys, I think his name was Mike, and Franklin or Caleb can correct me, just how quickly someone can suddenly come to, well, yeah, okay, right out of the sort of the conservative position. Very reasonable person. If you present yourself reasonably, that's what happens. It's great to see folks showing up here. Let people know that that we're here. Don't know how long we're going to be here, but tonight. But I wanted to give the foundations here. We all traveled a great distance, or Caleb by far the most. Franklin and I not terribly far, but we all traveled. We arrived at this place. We got there early. We got our seats, and they were sat in one place, and I was sat in another up in the front row. And we listened to about 2 hours of debates. And it was also very instructive because there is the possibility that I will run for office one day. And man, if we will go through these people like these are functionally comatose people. You have just the absolute dregs, anti-white monsters opposed by the functionally comatose Mayberry morons. And we would just cut right through this beautifully, I think. But one of the things they talked about, of course, the question came up by the moderator. He wanted to share. And that was the other thing. We did not know whether or not we were going to be allowed to speak at a microphone. That is the way the tickets looked and worked. That's how it appeared to be. You had to give your question ahead of time. And I gave a sort of a general question that would not agitate or irritate, and then step up to the microphone and ask my question the way I wanted to of the candidates. When we arrived there, I checked in, and then they said, here's an index card, write your question here. So that whole writing of the question thing online seemed to be just superfluous. I don't know, maybe that was an idea that they decided not to go with. Yeah, Caleb saying it'd be much more exciting. 2 hours. And if I was running for mayor, that would have been fireworks. And so I thought, oh, looks like we're not going to even be able to talk. But I asked, and I said, am I going to give you my index card with the question, and then you'll like say my name, and then I'll go up to a microphone and be able to ask my question? And they said, nope. The way this is going to work is you'll write your question on an index card, and then the questions will be selected randomly. Well, of course, that's preposterous. Randomly, and they will be read by the moderator. So the moderator, of course, he was standing up at the lectern, and he was like going through, you saw, he was like going through cards to find the questions that he wanted to ask of the candidates. So upon realizing that we weren't going to be able to speak at a microphone to the totality of the room, which was about 60 people in this room, I think, 50 to 60 or so. Upon realizing that, we concluded that the best thing to do at that point would be to address the candidates at the end of this debate. And so that was the plan through most of the debate, that we were just going to wait to the end. I was going to go up to the Republican candidate and Suzanne. I was going to ask her about anti-whitism, anti-white. Does she care about white people? We were like all praying to the great No White Guilt Clips to give us good luck as we moved forward and try and endeavored to carry this out as fantastically as he had, or at least somewhere close. But the objective of this action changed about 2/3 of the way through, because the moderator decided to ask about the religion diversity. Now, he didn't call it that. And we know that diversity is a mean pathogen that means white erasure, no more white people, and how good that is. So he asked the candidates about their position on diversity, and are they able to work with different peoples? And This was one of the most gelded, pathetic things, and sort of just so cultish. So just being in this room of brain dead people, most of the folks were normal, sort of Mayberry morons. There was a young lady that looked like she was very anti-white with electric pink hair, and I guess maybe her mother or something. They were also there. But the candidates, they each had their opportunity with the mic, and then they stood and talked about how much they love diversity and how wonderful it is for our society, and how wonderfully they work with people of all different races. And although none of them actually articulated the white race, that was an interesting thing that was missing. Because, of course, that's what diversity is, and everybody knows that down deep. It's not about can you work with white people. It's about, are you able to celebrate white erasure in those you work with and those you hire? Well, it got to, the microphone worked its way back around to the Mayor Burke of Leesburg, town of Leesburg. She stood up and she said, and she's a white woman, an older white woman, and kind of sickly looking. And she said, I don't have it quoted here, but we've got all the footage and everything I got to go through, audio as well. And she actually said she loves diversity so much that a couple of years ago, as mayor, they looked around at those who were employed for the town of Leesburg and discovered, what did she say, guys? To her horror? No, what did she call it? It was horrific, something like this. She said to her horror, it was horrific that there were so many white people employed by the town of Leesburg. Horror, horrific, something like that. I mean, can you believe it? Absolutely shocking. And she said, she then put this diversity task force to work to find out how they can replace all of these white people. Now, she doesn't want to call it that. She doesn't want to call it how we can replace all of these white people, but that was the objective. She doesn't want to call it that because it's that immoral. It's that disgusting. It's that reprobate. It's that reprehensible. This is what was actually said on this debate. It was horrific. It was horror. Franklin said, he thinks it was horror. She actually said this. This is not, we're not making this up. This is on video, it's on audio. She actually said that it was horrific, or to her horror, that so many white people were employed, and put this task force together, diversity white erasure task force. And by God, they went out and they got rid of all these white people. And then she talked about how now we have a black police chief. Now we have a black deputy police chief. Now we have, and she's like going down the line of how they've white erased white people from employment, and how magnificent this is, how tremendous, spectacular it is that they have done this in the town of Leesburg. Nobody batting an eye in this cult room. Nobody batting an eye. However, when the contender stood up, Suzanne, she said she's 100% for diversity. She can work with everybody as well. Of course, that means everybody but white people. And then she tossed in a little sentence that caused me to change the objective of the action, which was, sometimes, she said, diversity goes too far and hurts people. Something along that line. And so I told Franklin, I said, okay, we're gonna change this up. We're gonna see, instead of kind of confronting her about anti-whitism, does she care about white people, if we can actually talk her into using anti-whitism. She sounds like maybe, I mean, what else could she be talking about when she said sometimes diversity goes too far and hurts people? What else is she? Who's getting hurt? So when this when it ended, and they actually said, we're going to end a little early so that the candidates can have time to speak with folks. And so that was perfect. When it ended, I approached Suzanne. She was being interviewed by a reporter. So then I went over to Mayor Burke, and I said to Mayor Burke, when you actively discriminate against white people for employment, isn't that anti-white? And she said, making the ugliest face she could, no, it's not anti-white. It's about getting the best people. And I think Suzanne even said that as well, but we'll get to that in a second. And I said, I backed it up. I made this very simple for both of these ladies. I said, if you were to say you have too many Jews employed in the town of Leesburg, and you're going to create a commission to hire everybody but Jews, that would be anti-Semitic, wouldn't it? And she kind of gave a little nod. I said the same thing about blacks. Wouldn't that be anti-black? So when you do this to white people, it's anti-white. And again, rejected that it was but she was saying anti-white. So did Suzanne. And then just walked away. Just like ran away from me at that point. Now, on the video that I'm going to show, this like motley sort of cutting and just throwing some things together so you all have something to see. The audio quality is wretched. We were not prepared for the room to be as loud as it was when everybody got up, the 60 people got up, and they were all talking and they were putting chairs away. And so even though like I had my phone in my hand recording, and I still have to go through much of that audio. So much of that's going to be better than the video recording. Pardon me, which is what all we have here today. It was the drone of the room was like deafening to the microphones on the phones, and had not anticipated that at all. It's one of the things that we can take away from this as a learning experience and do better with in the future. And like, for example, if it had been that loud for clips, when he was speaking to Jeff Deal, I doubt you would have heard almost anything Jeff said, because that's how it was with Suzanne. You could almost not, even though the phone was right there that was doing the recording, the video recording, you still hardly hear her. So much raucous and the noise in the background. So I then go over to Suzanne, and this is really a great, and when I make the little video, it's really a great opportunity to see what's going on in this microcosmic scenario for the macrocosm of the entire West. Because on one side, you had this blue jacketed, she was literally wearing a blue jacket, the Democrat who clearly and viscerally hates white people, is happy to victimize white workers. No problem whatsoever with that. No wonder they have things like CRT, anti-whiteism in the schools in Loudoun, victimizing the children. They're just insane as it is. No wonder. And then on the other side of the aisle, you have this red-jacketed woman, literally wearing a red jacket, the Republican, and she is terrified to say anything is anti-white. Absolutely terrified. I submit to you, once again, I've mentioned this before, that white children could be getting butchered in front of a typical run-of-the-mill Republican, placeholder Republican, and even MAGA Republican. And the people butchering them would be saying this is for the fact that you are white, these children. And still, these folks would not say that it's because we're white. They just won't say it. That is how sick the population is. So she was a nice enough lady, and I didn't want to push her too hard. The intent was to get her to just call things anti-white that were anti-white. I ran through that same little example I gave you about if it's excluding this group, then it's that, right? And I was trying to plant the question in her head. She may have gotten it. But one of her colleagues, a woman off to her right, definitely got it. that you can call Mayor Burke anti-white. And how many of her constituents would turn away and not vote for her as a consequence? I don't know, since they're Democrat voters, but maybe some, and maybe that would be enough in that scenario. As I was speaking to, I'm going to play the video in just a moment. As I was speaking to Suzanne, the Republican, the contender for mayor, Caleb jumped in, and he said, "What would it take? What's the bar for you to finally say that something is anti-white? Do they have to drag white kids out into the street and tell them they're evil for the history of the world or something of this nature?" And she still was reluctant. She still would not say that something was anti-white, although you could see that down deep that she knew it's anti-white. She knows it's anti-white. So does Burke, Mayor Burke. Mayor Burke likes it being anti-white. Suzanne is terrified of mentioning that it's anti-white. Why is that? Because the anti-white narrative is real. That's why we have to talk about it. That's why you have to name it when you have your conversations with your friends, family, and strangers. You have to name it. Because in the anti-white narrative, white males control the West for the benefit of white males. But you don't see people, you don't see candidates terrified of saying white males are in control. You see them terrified of standing up against the victimization of white people. That means that the aggressor, the victimizer, is anti-white. That's what we can take away from that. And that's what we should be talking about. Other people come to erroneous conclusions. They'll talk about and it's an erroneous idea. I don't know where it comes from, but the slogan that just find out who you can't criticize, and those are the people who control society. I heard that a long time ago, and I immediately figured out that that's a midwit take in an attempt to understand what's going on in society. Because there are a lot of groups you can't criticize today. They're not all in charge. What matters is the victimization. I've told you all before that if we were to discover something like that turtles ran the world or something like that, it wouldn't be good and it wouldn't be effective and it wouldn't benefit us in any way, shape, or form to say we discovered that turtles are actually in charge. Just try to criticize a turtle and see what happens. It would not help us. In fact, the folks in charge, you could take this illogic, a step further and say that the people who are really in charge, they would want someone else to look like they're in charge. So don't fall into this trap of saying, well, whatever group you can't criticize. That is to center another group in a story that you decide to play a part in as an orbiting body, as a villain to them. Instead, you point out that you can't talk about the victimization of white people. That centers us. And if you can't understand how that is superior, how that's far more intelligent, far more intelligent than your first option, then I ask you to stop thinking about this on your own and to use what works. This is what works. We have decades of it succeeding, and it will continue succeeding for decades. You can be intransigent and boneheaded all you want and stand against it, but you are just delaying the recapture of our destiny by refusing to participate in love, hope, and redemption for Western kind. So let's take a quick look at this video. I'll see what you all are saying. Now, remember, this is not going to be, at least if we can endeavor for it to be the case, this is not going to be the sound quality. We're going to match the best audio with the best video. And this is just a general, we were there, this is what it looked like video. So there I was right there. And there I am. This is Suzanne in the red. I then walk over to, and then talking to, there's Mayor Burke. That's when I'm talking to her. Look at her shaking her head. Absolutely not. To get rid of the white people is to find the best people.
That's what people constitute. If you're excluding people, then you're not getting past.
And then here I am speaking with Suzanne.
Yeah, everybody should be equal, not just one race.
She gets actually quite irritable with us at one point.
But would you speak out against openly anti-white policies involving that when you get elected?
I am not sure that is the purpose to speak out against anti-white policies. I won't speak out against divided. I will speak out though. I would say, look, I don't want any sort of divisive policies coming into play.
What would it take for you to say something's anti-white? What would how much do they have to discriminate against women? You guys have it easy. What about us men? Yeah, what would it take? Because you're saying that you won't say it's anti-white. What would it take for you to say that it's anti-white? Putting our kids in the street and telling them that they're guilty in our schools?
With the fact that you're double teaming.
I'm not.
That's where she was actually starting to get irritated. It takes issue with the fact that we're double teaming her. She wishes. A nice lady. I'm not trying to be mean to her. She's just scared shitless. All right. Now this is the guy at the end of, what was his name, Mike? Nice guy. And I'll tell you what he's saying in a minute. I guess I can now. When I walked away from Suzanne, he grabbed me and he said, are you suggesting, and I had said this repeatedly because I was really hopeful that Suzanne would say, yes, as mayor, if something is blatantly anti-white, I will call it out as anti-white. But it was educational to see that no, indeed, no matter how anti-white something is, the Republican will not call it anti-white. In fact, at one point, I really hope we have this on good audio, she said, it's anti-human. She agreed that she would say something's anti-Semitic or anti-black, but when it came to white people, she said, no, I'll say it's anti-human. This guy, he was with her, and nice guy, he grabbed me and he said, are you saying that people should get the job based on their abilities? That's exactly what I was saying. And that there should be no discrimination based on race. I said, that's exactly what I'm saying. And he said, okay, well, maybe the best way to talk to her would be to say that she should call it out as anti-meritocratic. And that's when I was just like, absolutely not. I gave the guy and we'll see we have a couple of angles at different times, and we'll see if you can see how I say this to him and hear exactly what I say. But ultimately, I just go ahead and assume that he knows the truth and make it sort of one of those like easy, but at the same time, sort of a challenging joke. Like, come on, man, you know, it's anti-white. That's what it is. And then he shakes his head. Yeah, that's what it is. He was just trying to find a way to word this that in his mind will prevent them from being attacked by anti-whites, because that's what they exist for and that's what they do. If you stand up for white people, there's no greater evidence out there that we are assaulted, not with communism, not with socialism, not with any of these other things, but with anti-whiteism. She could say all day long, I'm not going to tolerate communism in the town of Leesburg. She could say that all day long. I'm not going to tolerate socialism. She's terrified to say, I'm going to put an end to anti-whiteism. Terrified to say that the victims are victims because they're white. She won't even say that. She wants to say because they're human. That is the greatest evidence there is about who our victimizer is and what their objective is. Because you can't even defend on the basis of that which you are attacked.
Is that kind of what you're saying, meritocracy?
So that's it. I just threw that together. I was sitting up front here. I'm on the left there. And you can see there's a big spectrum of humanity there. Fewer and fewer white people, I'm sure, at each of these debates. And I was preparing my phone to be able to record. There I am going up to Suzanne. She's on the far right. And I've, in this case and in the subsequent video that we produce, cut our heroes out of these videos. Why? Because the white man's not in charge. Because people are ruined for defending at the point that anti-whites attack on the basis of our race. You can see this. Watch this woman shake her head one more time. When I say isn't that anti-white? Look, no. Not even a moment of consideration. Actually saying doesn't she look like she's like the devil? She's got like these two lights over her head here. They're like the horns. Actually saying that you get the best people when you exclude whites from participation. Tried to claim that non-white people didn't know that the jobs were available. That's preposterous. Yeah, you can see. Look, she says there, you can probably hear, she says, I'm not sure. At moments, she tried to play the Republican dumb move. Like, I'm not quite sure if it's really anti-white to hire a diversity crew to find out how we can get rid of these white people. Not quite sure if that's anti-white. And then she actually said, I mean, to her credit, she said, I'm never going to say that something's anti-white in this town. She just said it. Not because it's not anti-white, but because she knows she'll be ruined for it. So if there are any questions, all the normal means of financial gifting are open, and tagging me and everything like that. I'll keep an eye open. Ardent Party says, I see a couple of masks. Are they all that common still? No. Not in Virginia. Somebody with the name of Period is trying to center another group of humanity with his comments. What group is the most responsible? You do not have a race to which you belong. You do not have a people to which you belong. Forming an opinion about what you think the greatest threat is to a people that doesn't exist is asininity. Do you understand? I want you to take that back to the other antags out there and tell them it is asininity to claim that you can form an opinion about what you believe is the greatest threat to a people when that people does not exist. You need to stop doing this. You need to go free of that nonsense. You do not have a people for which your opinion about the threat to that people can inform the people's opinion. Every other race of mankind has a people. You do not. You belong to a race or group of radical individuals. And when you tell those radical individuals, hey, this group has the most power and they're harming us, they break out their resumes and they find ways to flee from it. And they find ways to identify as something other than. And they white erase themselves, taking non-white partners and having non-white children. You all need to stop this. I'm pleading with you and everybody out there who continues with this nonsense. You do not have a people for whom your opinion can inform their opinion. Stop this. Stop being so short-sighted. You need to create a people out of a deracinated race. And you can only do that by cornering them with argumentation that we've done with these concepts that forces them to recognize that the group to which they are, the group to which they belong is victimized, and therefore their belonging to that group ensures or guarantees their victimization. That means that the group has to be identified, the victimizer group has to be identified by the act of that victimization. If you don't understand that, I get it. Maybe you are a heart surgeon and I don't understand how to do heart surgery. Maybe you are a master mechanic and I don't understand how to do whatever it is that you do on automobiles or speedboat motors or whatever it is. You clearly do not have a handle on socio-political, racial, psychological warfare anywhere close to what I have. Stop trying to tell me how to do what I do when what I do is proven to work and what you do, what you're advocating for, is proven to fail. It has been failing long before you were born. And it's been used and failed by people with more money than you, more power than you, more reach than you. Stop it. All of you out there, stop it. I know it's one of the reasons why that appeals to folks is because it's so lowbrow. It's so basic. Now, I have explained myself on this issue. And if you don't have an argument to overcome my position, then it is your duty, if you are white, to doff, to shed, to 86 your current position that doesn't work and adopt one that you can see is working. It's your duty. If you don't do it, you're no white male or woman, because this is white men and women of the West. We shed and 86 and get rid of that which does not work. And we adopt that which does in the service of our objective. Yeah, every other group of people, I see Steel Flex saying that Jews have no problem saying they support their people. That's true for every other race of man, everyone. It only is not true for white people. And the reason why is we don't have a people. We have a race that's deracinated, that is radical, that is composed of radical individualists. You see this person with this period for a name asking my opinion on Muslims and outnumbering Jews in America. My concern, and should be yours as well, is with the well-being of our people. You should be focused on us. Forget about these other groups. Rory is here. Great to see you, good brother. I remember visiting a supermarket in Northern Virginia 30 years ago. Even back then, the wealthy would send their chauffeurs in their limousines to pick up their groceries. Yes, you're absolutely right. This disrespect for me, demonstrated here by demography now, it's a me not thing to do. You know, who are you? What have you done for white well-being in your life? What have you actually done? And look at all that I have done. Look at the heroes that I've surrounded myself with. We've saved lives. We've made lives better. You need to get some respect. There's nothing Western about your behavior. You need to pick yourself up out of the slums, out of the wretchedness. Dust yourself off and show some respect. Somebody called Logos used the anti-white slur racist on me. You shouldn't be so anti-white. Kevin says, I know white girl. Well, big hello to you from the once great state of Virginia. And you can see why here, why it's a once great state and not what it used to be. This woman over here that you can see over on the left, she was the one that really started to get that you could call, this Suzanne could call Burke anti-white in their competition with her for office. Just take that clip of Burke saying it was a horror to have so many white people employed. I'd put that on every television, radio station that they could afford. We're going to be talking much more about this. We'll be getting out of here real soon. We're going to be talking about much more about this on Sunday, or at least more about this. Hopefully I'll have a nice compact video with some good audio so you can hear and you can see firsthand. The Democrat anti-white, loving it. I mean, just, she probably left there to go drink the blood of children. And the Republican, this nice lady here, terrified, absolutely terrified. Duke of Bedford is here. Great to see you. Cool name. Yeah, the problem group are anti-whites. That's the problem group. That Burke is white. Focus on us and our victimization and stop trying to form an opinion about a threat to a group that does not exist. Jesus, how stupid. All right, Arden Party. Thanks for showing up. The Virginia GFC, Going Free Club, kicking ass, ladies and gentlemen. And now this ends up we got bragging rights as a club. And so the other clubs out there, they're going to have to get out and make it happen. They're going to have to get out there and have conversations with politicians and see what they can capture. We plan, and I want to get your feedback too. So any ideas you have about how maybe this could have been done better, you can put in the thread here or Sunday, other things that we could do as a club. We already have some ideas about different events that we would like to attend. We certainly want to go to an event where we can talk about going free on a microphone, so they can't just decide, well, not going to answer or not going to read off this index card, as was clearly being done by the moderator. But these kind of scenarios, going up to the people and being able to talk with them after the debates, after the speeches, is a fantastic opportunity. And there isn't a level, like you don't have to wait for the perfect scenario. When I reached out to Franklin to be able to do this, there just were no perfect scenarios. You know, there were no clearly delineated MAGA Republicans that were going to be in a great location for all of us to be able to get to and address with these questions. Don't wait for perfect. You can get out there if you got some sort of county commission and there's clearly a Republican, and you can get up to that person and speak with them, videotape, and be aware, though, that if there's going to be noise like this, that a regular phone is just not going to cut it. It really is drowned out by the drum in the background. So you can get to any of these people, though, get a conversation. What about whites? And just get them talking about our victimization. And if you end up with a Suzanne and she's demonstrating this great fear, well, that's good. That's a great learning opportunity for our brothers and sisters out there. We'll be able to take the video. Hopefully we can get it to look good enough, and we'll do like clips that we'll put the words up on the screen. And we'll be able to take this and show people that this Republican won't say that anything is anti-white, even when she's willing to say that something's anti-Semitic or anti-black. She just absolutely won't. This is the only way we have a chance. You look at these people who are talking about their excitement for Carrie Lake, and this woman's absolutely excluding the white race. Republican Party is the party of the Latino, and then uses a racial epithet for the white race. Talks about how proud she is that her husband is Latino and her children are Latino. That's going to be your Republican Party. Your Republican Party, as I've talked about with you all, is going to increasingly, not just in substance, but also in the superficial, also just in the words and the claims of the politicians make, will be satisfying increasingly the needs of non-white people, speaking to increasingly only the needs of non-white people. And this will translate into genuine policy change for the Republican Party. So as the Republican Party, as you have more Hispanic people coming into the country, more and more Hispanic people and other non-whites, you have Indians, Arabs that are divided more in favor of the Democrat Party than the Republican. But as their numbers grow and they become the constituency, not only by way of the anti-white narrative that has to be appealed, but also actual voters, so that these actual human beings, and this is something that so few people seem to be able to compute simultaneously, is that you have individuals that are serving individual selfish desires to hold power, to be in office, to get a check for it, to be on television, to be interviewed by the radio. They are going to know where their bread is buttered, and they're going to speak to the needs of these growing constituencies. If we don't get them to talk about the victimization of the white race, white erasure, anti-whiteism, now it will never be possible. In another 5 years, The Republican Party is going to be talking about, they'll be talking the Republican Party, murmurings probably within at least 5 years, of satisfying the views on self-defense, satisfying the views on the First Amendment that are held by Latinos and what they call Latinos and Arabs and Indians. And those views are very different in a democratic way from the majority of white people who vote Republican. They are not the big defenders of the Second Amendment in their numbers. Of course, there are individuals, but when it comes to democracy, we're talking about numbers. So they are not in their numbers ardent supporters of the right to self-defense. They are not in their numbers ardent supporters of free speech as we define free speech and the right to self-defense, and have historically defined free speech and the right to self-defense. This is my opinion of them, but you can look at polls of these communities and you can form opinions for yourself. There are a lot of Hispanic people in the United States. Look at the polls. Don't get it from me. I'm just opinionating here. You look at the polls, and they are in favor of things like a stronger border and more economic perks to being in the United States. And the border is not about retaining so much the American, the Western essence of America, which is all but gone, but it is about keeping out competitors to economic advantages. So they want to keep out, the workers who have come to the country over the past 10 years or so, for example, and they've gotten jobs, or 20 years, and they've gotten jobs from the people who used to be doing those jobs. They don't want to have to compete with them, with new people coming in. So they become defenders of the border and desirous of more economic perquisites. And so they then have to go to the Republican Party to have their desires satisfied. They also, however, according to these polls that I have seen, but maybe I'm wrong, so look into it for yourself, have very different views on self-defense and freedom of speech. So as they populate increasingly the Republican Party, the constituency of the Republican Party, you'll see essential things to what's left of our lives, our way of life. You'll see essential things removed from the platform. And that'll be that. So I pleaded with this, Suzanne. I said, be the first. Republicans have to take a stand on this. They have to call things anti-white that are anti-white. Be the first. Be the mayor who does it. And she's terrified because she's woman, because she's seeking the job for her, seems to be very motivated about COVID and the vaccines. And the Mayor Burke required everybody in the town to have to get the vaccine, which Pfizer just spoke about at the EU, and said something, I guess, shocking for some, not shocking for all, about whether or not they actually did any testing to ensure that it was able to prevent people from catching COVID. So you can go look at that for yourself. But that's what's really motivating her. So you're not going to see some champions standing up unless we get there behind them, unless we give them the words, the concepts. And it may indeed, you never know with this woman. Maybe she becomes mayor, maybe she doesn't, maybe she stays on the city or the town council, whatever it is. But the next time that something truly anti-white comes up, that word anti-white and the word anti-whiteism is now in her vocabulary. By the way, she also recognized both of those things. She didn't need me to describe it to her. And white erasure as well. And she might end up stating in anger that this is what this thing is. And that would be magnificent. That would be dazzling for us. Vex Peril, I don't know what your objection would be to the moderators who are deleting comments from people who are being rude and insulting me, and also refusing to hear any of the arguments that I've made. They just keep advancing the same focus hatred on another group of humanity. So that you can identify the threat to a group that doesn't exist, to a people that doesn't exist. I mean, that's dumb. So I don't know why you'd be upset with them doing that. So let me see. We're blank. So once again, I just want to give my, we talked, Caleb and Franklin and myself, we talked for like hours after, it was over an hour easily afterward. And we were excited. We were pumped. We're talking about doing this more often. And I want you all to think about how this ends up landing. Like, how did this end up landing on, how did this end up landing on this Republican woman? She knew, and this guy that was with her, they're going to be able to go away from that, having talked to respectable people who, from a position of love and moral standing, address the victimization of Western kind. They're going to be able to actually hear that. What other argument in the white sympathetic sphere could be brought to these people that they'd be willing to listen to, that they would be able to take away and use? She's going to be able to use anti-white, anti-whiteism, white erasure. She's going to be able to use all of that if she chooses to do so. There's nothing else you could have given her. Everything else would have turned her off. She actually said at one moment, and the demonstration of my and Caleb's love for our people immediately disabused her of this. But she actually said, is this some sort of a white power thing? Now, could you imagine if you had gone up and you were talking about Muslims, the threat of Muslims and the threat of Jews and all this ignorant stuff, all this nonsense, all this absolute centering of other groups of humanity. If you had gone up with any other argument, she would have seen you as a reprobate and would have immediately dismissed you. And what about the woman? There was the guy, but there was the other woman that was to her right. She heard that whole conversation. At no point did she demonstrate disgust or rancor, etc., which is exactly what she would have had we been villains in the anti-white narrative. So really think about these things. I don't know what's wrong with the vast majority of the white sympathetic sphere. Something's really wrong. I guess this just holds true for the population in general. But if you actually care about white people, then you're going to want to do what works. You can't make arguments to overcome the arguments I'm making. That means you're wrong. That's how science works. That means you're wrong. Fernald and I exchanged some messages about this just yesterday. If you are going to be a man or woman of the West, you have to forfeit, surrender what does not work if the well-being of our people is your actual objective. If not, if your objective is to be a jackass, dingleberry, be an antag in the anti-white narrative, well, then you're doing the right thing. You're denying, you're just ignoring the arguments I make. You're ignoring the successes we have. Everyone knows looking at this. This woman right here, she could have me over for dinner. She would never have you over for dinner. This woman could have a genuine conversation with me. She would never listen to you. And neither would any of these other normal brothers and sisters, folks out there. They don't want to hear that shit. How long do you have to be wrong? So this is a great victory. It's a great boon, because this is a GFC getting together for white well-being and engaged in that advocacy in an action that was powerfully successful in various ways, and a great learning opportunity as well. Let's see. Rory Herbert says, back in 2015, my wife convinced Nigel Farage, wow, to support Donald Trump rather than Rand Paul. Do you think she was right to do so? She talked to Nigel Farage? And yeah, she was right to do so. El Ronder saying every time he tags me, his chat just becomes invisible. Huh. Sloth says, Sloth is the great Sloth is here, in-house resident philosopher, says, you're crediting this to the GFC is a credit to your intelligence. Well, I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. It was 100% a team effort, and at minimum it was going to require 3 of us to attempt what a no white guilt clips was able to do, but we're going to keep working at it. And hats off to that champion pulling that off by himself in that hostile environment. I'd like to see other GFCs where they can get together. With GFCs, you can do so digitally as well as physically. You can get together digitally and raid, if you will, have an action on. Sometimes they have these town halls online. You can be censored much more easily in an environment like that, but it's worth the effort. And when you do, you'll learn, and we can improve our efforts. And remember, the point of this, of course, is to seed the population with the concepts that empower Western kind by changing the story we are in, forcing anti-whites to speak to us in our story in which they become the villain, which is why Mayor Burke ran away. When I was talking about, isn't that harming white workers? She just ran away. Why would she run away? Because she was immoral in that scenario. Yeah, we were talking about, Franklin just put clips in the live chat. We were talking about the clips while we were there. It's like what would clips do? What would clips do? You have all these people talking about, like, what would Nietzsche do? Who gives a shit? What would clips do in this scenario? We were going back and forth. Franklin and I were like, all right, how's this going to roll out? We didn't know how they were going to go about giving each person an opportunity to speak, when the questions were going to be delivered. So, but now we do. Now we've got a better understanding. And so we'll be even more effective in the future doing these sorts of things. So yeah, it's an experience. So it can be, we were talking about that last night while we were hanging out. By the way, both of these champions, they got the newly minted, each of them, one apiece, got newly minted artwork by our very own Elaine Sabatino. They also got Eindolens while we were together, and cards. Who makes the business cards? We've got cards to distribute. I gave them some of that as well. But we were talking about, and Mad Dog says here, not going to lie, it took me a while to get the story. This is something, we were talking about this last night. The Go Free method is something that is completely different from what has gone before. And so it can be difficult. And we need to keep that in mind when we talk to people. We try to bring them over to the practice of Go Free. That it's hard to understand at first because it's out of the story in which you live. You're in the anti-white narrative. And you have a really stark dichotomy of what you can be in that narrative, or how you could advocate as well. And this is something that is like, and I likened it before, if you all remember, there's the booklet called Flatlanders, and it was an attempt to help people understand 3 dimensions, the 3-dimensional space. So in Flatlanders, it's 2 dimensions, infinitely flat. So you have to imagine that there isn't a vertical side to side, front, back. And so they don't know anything of the 3rd dimension. And when a 3-dimensional sphere passes through this flatland 2-dimensional world, they can only see that sliver of it. They can't see the rest of it. And the 3-dimensional character has to try to explain what the 3rd dimension is like to these Flatlanders. And later in the story, the 3-dimensional character takes the Flatlander up into 3 dimensions, and then he can see down into Flatland. He can see inside the bodies of his fellow Flatlanders. And you can see right inside the houses. This is like another dimension. And so it can be difficult to understand. But the sign of an adult, irrespective of your education level, I'm going to get out of here in a moment, but irrespective of the education level, the sign of an adult, the sign of an honest person, is somebody that when their position is defeated in argumentation by way of reason and logic, not sophistry, right? Not deceptive reasoning, but by reason and logic, and when evidence demonstrates the superiority of a position relative to their own position, the adult thing to do, the Western thing to do, the white man and woman thing to do, is to abandon your current position, even if you don't understand how the new position is successful. You can just see that it's successful. Franklin's got a bird's eye view. Artificers here, great to see you. 20,000 foot view. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're outside. Montana Kids is outside the box. For the longest time in the white sympathetic sphere, I've been calling it being outside the coffin. Because if you just stay inside the anti-white narrative, their box, it's a coffin for our people. So it is outside of the coffin. Well said. All right, over here on entropy. Wow. First, we're going to go to, there's Light of the Twin Lamps. God bless you, brother. $15 financial gift. Thank you so much. And he writes with that, the anti-white streamer Vaush, in a recent debate with Martinez's perspective, argued that white Californian and white Floridians are different enough to be different races. Oh my God. While I disagree, I have noticed white Americans suffer from more division, urban versus rural versus suburban, compared to non-whites. Precisely. They do. Obviously, this Vaush person is retarded to claim that they are different races. White people in California and white people in Florida are different races. How idiotic. But we do divide ourselves, sectarianize ourselves very easily in ways that non-white people do not do so as easily. And you point out here between urban dwellers and suburban, exurban, and rural folks. And the reason why is we don't have a people. That's how we so easily do it. That's why it's not as easily done for non-white people. When they divide, for example, when non-white people divide along gang lines, that is for financial, sexual profit. That's not a division of a people. Those are groups vying financially. It's usually through the sale of drugs or prostitutes or whatever it is, and the sexual reward of being in power. So that's true. That's absolutely true when it comes to white people versus non-white people, in my opinion. Susan, at the head of YouTube, may have a different opinion about that, so consult with her or whoever else. But I want everybody to get out your raucous emojis, please. Whoever is left here, get out your raucous emojis, your 07s, because one of our Herculean champions, Promethean Promulgation, has financially gifted $100 US, $100. And he says with those $100, epic victory. Damn right. Epic victory. It is. And let's talk about how it's an epic victory on our social media and with our friends and whoever we can talk to about this sort of thing. How does potentially empowering, and also being able to take this footage of a evil white, anti-white mayor and a terrified white contender for that position, we can take that footage and then use that to educate our brothers and sisters about the anti-white narrative, about that which we are teaching. It is proof of so many of our claims in the Go Free method. It is proof, once again, of so much of what we say about the anti-white narrative. We can use that to educate. And I'll say that we potentially empowered Suzanne with those three concepts. We got her also to think very differently about people who approach her about the victimization of white people. She didn't see a bunch of Nazi idiots. She didn't see a bunch of antags. She didn't see a bunch of antnats. She didn't see a bunch of this stuff. She saw respectable men speaking out of love in a courageous and moral way. That colors her understanding of what it means to stand up for white people in a very different way, 180 degrees from what she would have experienced with people standing on a street corner with an ugly sign or two and a bullhorn or whatever it might be, right? We actually spoke to people in power, people who could be in power, rather than just going out, say, for example, on a street corner and making a nuisance of ourselves, right? So it is an epic victory. And the camaraderie that we had and the energy that buoyed us as a consequence of the success is an epic victory as well. More will happen, and we're looking forward to that. We have the great Mestizo over here in the question widget on entropy, and he writes, Jason, what are your thoughts on the DC statehood movement? I sent you a video. I'll have to check it out, brother. All I know is that it would give Democrats a lot more power in future elections. Very scary. Yeah, they would get 2 senators, and that'd be it. There would never be anybody who wasn't radically and openly anti-white coming out of DC. It would be probably even a bigger siphon for federal funds, and voting wise, that would be it. The Democrats would be able to do whatever they want in the Senate. So that would be over. It is an awful thing. God bless you both, financially gifting. Promethean Promulgation, thank you so much. $100. Helios says, check your Gumroad. Joined the hero level. Just want to hear the great Helios Albert. Congratulations on another tremendous victory. Thanks, Jason, and the NWG community. Yeah, folks, I saw that. Let's get some 07s for Helios Abbott as well. Some raucous emojis. He joined the hero level over on Gumroad, which is $100 financial gift a month. God bless you, man. The great Helios Abbott. That's fantastic. I'm going to have to remember, because I don't, did you add, is Helios Abbott in the name over there or the title? I'm going to have to try to remember. If Ladybug is here, she can help me remember. God bless you, man. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I was going to mention that and I probably will still mention it on Sunday. That was a great surprise. Thank you so much. Hey, look, the Great Clips is here. Great to see you, good sir. We were talking about you, and you're just earth-shaking success and trying to imitate it. Caleb said, so great talking to you, brother. Was creating this story, and we all have the roles to play. We were creating the story, and we all have roles to play. Exactly. We talked about that too. Caleb expertly brought it up that night we were writing the story of our victory. And we'll be doing that moving forward. A big thank you to everybody who showed up tonight. Thank you so much. And we're going to come back together. And everybody who financially gifted, thank you so much. We're going to come back together on Sunday for the gathering. And it's going to be truly royal. It's going to be truly royal. It's going to be virtuosic. We're going to have a great gathering, talk about this great success. And who knows what else. It's going to be fun. Oh, we have a new segment too. A random question segment. So look for that when you show up on the gathering on Sunday. And until then, roll out.